Hi, welcome to Tamika Story Time. If this is your first time clicking in, I encourage you to hit that subscription button, give me thumbs up, and I will give you a cautionary tale. Today I'm going to be speaking on, I want to first put this out. I would like to say I was going to give the cautionary tale of Susan Watts' story. She was a pregnant mother, wife, if you will, who was murdered at the hands of her husband with her two children, her two little girls. And I say, my condolence goes out to her family. Her husband has been trialed and convicted. He will not see the day of light. However, I would like to say my condolence. My love, support, and prayers go out to them. They have been in a very bad spot. Social media has not been too nice, if you will, to this family. For whatever reason, I do not know. But they did not want they would like for this to just go away because it's been hell, if you will. Excuse my French, but family has been tormented by social media, cyberbullying, this particular victim's family about this whole case and this whole verdict. So I'm not going to go into any more details about that, but I would say that my prayers, my condolence go out to her family. And I would say that if you cannot do that, words is the tongue is a very powerful thing. So you don't want to hurt people that's already hurting. They lost their daughter, their grandchildren. They don't need no more. The poor father is at his wit's end, and I don't want to see nobody be destroyed mentally, physically, or any other way they're already a victim. They've been victimized. They don't need to be bullied for whatever reason. So I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to speak on that anymore. And I just wanted to say that. But but I'm saying that to say this particular story that I'm going to share with you almost mirrors her story, but it's not quite. But it mirrors this situation, if you will. I did like to tell you, anybody who watched, I have my tea, my ginger lemon tea, before I start anything. And I also incorporate this Super Greens, Live Good Super Greens in my tea for whole body cleanse. Mind, body, and soul. And I'm going to take a sip. Bear with me. In this particular case, shadows that Shannon Watts, almost in the same location, Colorado. This happened in '86, and it was such a powerful story that it guided me through my adulthood when I became independent and got my own place. And I will share with you how and why. Now I'm going to give you the story right now. The cautionary tale story is about this young, beautiful Latino woman. She was every bit in her mid-20s, early 20s, mid-20s. She had two children, two sons, a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, and she was pregnant. And her and her husband lived in this apartment complex. Her husband worked not too far from the apartment complex. He worked at a naval base there in Colorado. So that is probably what put them there in that particular location where they were. And at this building, there was this maintenance man who made this woman, he was attracted to this woman because he would do cattle call when she would walk by with her children, which was very inappropriate. This man was oh, mamacita, you know, you look so good, and making his comments to her, you know, let me come see you, you know, just trying to make, you know, waves at her, if you will. This was not a Latino man. He was an African American man. And he also, to give you a little bit of his, before I go any further, he was a nice looking guy, but he was also in his transitioning phase he was released from prison, if you will. But while he was released from prison, he was released on a probation terms of him being operating under the orthodox of Christianity, because that was when his parole came up, he professed to have been changed and had become a minister, if you will, some sort of minister, or seeking to become a minister. So they released him to this particular Christian a Christian education center, and it was in Colorado that he was to do his classes or take his courses there, as well as job placement, which placed him at this apartment complex. So he would be out there with the other fellows, if you will, but he would be the one who would make the most noise towards this woman. And she made it clear to her babysitter, this guy really creeps me out, and you know, he always has something to say. He knows I'm a married woman, I have my children. I don't appreciate him making those type of suggestions to me when I have my children. So, you know, the young lady, she was an African American young woman who babysitted this lady's kids, and she was like, oh, you know, so disgusted by his conduct nonetheless. So when this woman, this particular day, her husband always left early to go to work at 5 a.m. to get to his job. And this babysitter would wait for her, Miss Pauline. I'm going to say this woman's name is Miss Pauline, because I don't recall this lady's name, but we're going to call her Miss Pauline. Miss Pauline would bring the children down to her. So she's sitting there waiting, and she's eating her breakfast, and she realized she's finished her breakfast. The time is getting away, and she's like, wait a minute, Miss Pauline ain't bringing the kids down yet. What's the problem? So she goes up to the apartment and she knocks on the door, and she hears a thump thump, and she's calling out, Pauline, Pauline, and she gets no answer. So she goes back down into her apartment, and she just, you know, fouls it off as a, you know, she's probably getting the kids ready, or, you know, I don't know what it is that she's doing, but when she's ready, she'll be down. This is this woman's thought process. But as time went on, there was no Miss Pauline. So she says, okay, maybe she's not going into work today. But by noontime, she sees the coroner come drive up, and now they're coming in her building and going up the steps. So she opens her door and she said, hey. So she sees them go up into Miss Pauline's apartment. So she's wondering, what is going on? Why are they going up in her apartment? What's going on? So they said, ma'am, you have to step back. You can't come up these steps. So she said, well, I'm her babysitter, and I was waiting for her to bring her children down. Is she okay? So they said, look, we can't tell you anything. Only thing we can say is that you can't come up here. So with that understanding, she went back into her apartment and closed the door, and she was just waiting for news. Come to find out that this woman husband left at 5 a.m. as usual. When he couldn't get in touch with his wife, now this is in 86, they don't have cell phones. the landline. This was unusual for her not to answer the call. And if she missed his call, she would call him when she got to work. So when he didn't receive that call on his lunch break, instead of taking his lunch, he went back home. And when he went back home, that's when he found his family. Now, this woman, when the babysitter came up to her door and was knocking on her door, and she heard the 2 thumps, that was the time that this woman was being murdered. And she was being murdered by the maintenance man. The maintenance man, when that husband left out the door, he waited for the husband to leave. Then he went and unlocked that door, went into her apartment, and Miss Pauline is bent over the tub trying to get the tub bath water ready for her children, to get them ready for the day. She's 4 months pregnant and she's bent over. This man, when she heard him coming, he pushed her head back down into the water, was holding her down, and she's scrambling trying to get up, and she's pressed, and her stomach is pressed against this tub, and he's pushing her head back down into the water. And meanwhile, while he's pushing her head down in the water, he pulls her nightgown up and her underwear, and he's raping her at the same time. Her children is in the room. They're woke, 5 and 3, and they hearing this madness. This man is doing something to their mother, and they're in terror. When he finished with Miss Pauline, he goes into the children's bedroom, and in that in her bedroom, he finds the oldest little boy sitting on her bed, and he looks to the side and see a dumb bar, and picks that dumb bar up and bludgeons this child to death. Goes into the younger child room and bludgeons him to death before he leaves out that apartment. And in the process of him doing so, he drops his maintenance man pen onto the bed where he bludgeoned. So when he left out, he left something behind, and what unbeknownst to him. So once the father got home, this is what he came home to. When he came home on his lunch break, this is what he walked into. He freaks out, calls 911, tell them. They get there. The coroner comes, follows behind that. They take the husband out to do the interrogation. He's visibly shaken. He's visibly upset. The detective is collecting all their evidence, as they do, and they're interrogating the husband. And in the process, the woman, the babysitter, is standing at her door waiting for the detective to come down. So when they do, she asks, inform them who she is and her connection to this woman, and says, I'm the babysitter and I just want to know what's going on. I was supposed to watch her children. Is she okay? Please tell me something. Are the children okay? So the detective said, I hate to inform you of this, but all 3 are deceased. And if you know anything, did you hear anything? And she explained to them exactly what she heard, at what time she heard that. So they took that information and they proceeded on with their investigation. So during the course of their investigation, they discovered that the neighbor across from the apartment, from Pauline, who lived directly across in the hall from Pauline, it was a young couple. And they knocked on that door and they asked them, did they hear anything or see anything? And that's when the fiance said, oh yeah, I seen the maintenance man come from her apartment. As I was coming out at 5:30 in the morning, as I usually do, to walk my dog. I was coming out of my apartment and he was leaving the apartment of Pauline. He went down the steps. That was the last time I saw this man. It wasn't unusual because he's the maintenance man. So they said, okay. So they go on to the office, the main office, to find out, okay, where is this maintenance man? Do the maintenance man have the keys to the apartment? They said no, not usual. Do you have the address for this man? They gave his address. He went to this man's home. He was not there. His fiance answers the door. So they said, could we come in? She said, sure. So she lets the detectives in, and they ask, is it usual for your fiance to have keys to the different units of the, apartments? And she said, no, he doesn't have it. She said, but I do. And they said, oh, really? And she said, yes, I have the master key that is to get into all the units, because I do the deep cleaning for each apartment. So they said, oh, okay, so could you get those master keys for us? So she said, sure. So she went to go retrieve these master keys, and they were not there. So she said, that's strange. They usually are here. I keep them in this particular place where I can always go to them, and they're not here. So she's showing them in this box that she usually holds these keys in, and they were not there. So they said, okay, is your fiance, are you washing clothes? That's what they asked her, because they smelled a strong odor of bleach. And they said, are you cleaning or washing clothes? And she said, no. She said, my fiance washed his clothes. So they said, can we go look? And they looked inside the washing machine, and his clothes was there, had been washed and bleached, and they were not white clothes. They were just his maintenance clothes, his clothes that he wore, his uniform, and that's all that was in that washing machine. So they said thank you, and they left out the apartment, and left and informed her to inform her fiance that they would need to speak to him. So they go back to the building, the office, and they look and they see this pen. And the pen is the same exact pen that they found on the bed of Miss Pauline's apartment, next to her bludgeoned child. So they asked the super if this pen, do all the workers have this pen? He said, yes, they do. Everyone has this pen, So they said, okay. So as they asking information about the pen, in comes the maintenance man who they're in question of. He walks in and he signs his name. So they said, we would like to speak to you. And he said, okay. So they said, where were you at such time? And he said, I was at work. And did you by chance go past Miss Pauline's place? And he said, I did. I fixed XYZ. So they said, okay. And what time was that? So he gave the time. Okay. So it kind of like justified him leaving her apartment at that time. So they said, we'll be, speaking to you a little bit more. So they did more interrogation with this guy, and they locked him up because the pen was on the bed next to the baby, and they collected their evidence that they felt was suffice and sufficient enough to get this man put away. I go on to trial, and they was like, so confident, the detectives was so confident that this man was going to be locked up, put away. Well, the jury didn't see it that way. They said this man was not guilty due to lack of evidence. that the evidence that they had on him was circumstantial. So when they said that, they was like in disbelief. And the guy, the maintenance man, turns to the victim husband and gave him a smirk, as if to say, "Ha, I took your family and I got away with it." This man was devastated beyond words. He just wept and wept, and the detectives they were like, "Oh, we are so sorry." They just couldn't stop apologizing enough. And they was like, "No, this is not it. We're going to get this guy. I mean, we're going to retrial this." So this man went on. He left Colorado, went to New York. The detectives was in his office. This was four months later. 4 months later, he got a call from New York, and they said, "Mr. Williams," and he said, "Yeah." He said, "You was working on a case for Mr. Davidson, on a case involving Mr. Davidson?" And he said, "Yes, I was." And needless to say, I'm not happy with the verdict. And he said, "Well, you don't need to worry anymore because Mr. Davis is dead." So he said, "Oh yeah, well, what happened?" So he said to the detective from New York. The detective from New York said to the Detective Williams, he was thrown from the 8th floor window. He got into an altercation with somebody and they threw him head first out of the window from the 8th floor. So he's no longer with us. So the Detective Williams said, "Well, that's good. Thank you for reporting." So with that, the case was closed. I say that to say, this is a cautionary tale. I always say, if you watch my other videos, those who think that you got away with something, and I always speak on karma, this is a clear reflection of karma. When karma comes, it comes direct. It comes straightforward. It makes no hesitation. It has no bias of who you are, where you going, or where you came from. When it comes to collect, it collects. Karma collected that man and devoured him. Devoured this man's identity, purpose in life, and on this earth. That man will never ever hurt a woman, a man, or a child. And he didn't know. The Lord don't make no mistakes. He let him get away. He let him walk. He had something. That woman, I truly believe that woman's spirit wouldn't rest until this man was taken out of this world for what he did to her, her baby, her unborn child, her babies. Yeah, that woman would not rest, and she made sure that something happened to that man. So rather it was her spirit, karma, whatever you may call it, let that be a cautionary tale for those who think that you're going to do something to somebody and get away with it. And this is for all the women. How I'm going back to when I say how it changed my thought process when I got my first apartment. And every apartment that I've had, I always included another lock on the door. Do not just accept the lock that you move in with and you move into your unit with, and they give you those keys. You go get yourself an additional lock to put on your door that only you have, so that when you in that home by yourself, you can put that lock on. When you leave out your house, you can put your lock on. You know that lock going to be on, and if it ain't on, then that means somebody's inside your place. How else you going to know if somebody's coming and going inside your apartment if you just taking the keys that they hand over to you? It could be the previous renters. It could be the maintenance man. It could be anybody. But you need to have some form of, that gave me some form of comfort. And I seen this when I was a child, never forgot it. And I all applied that cautionary action into my present life when I moved forward into my places. And a lot of times, many years I've lived alone. So as a woman living alone, I had, in order for me to close my eyes at night and really sleep comfortably and not without the fear of me waking up and somebody standing over me or coming down my hall, no, I made sure that I had additional lock put on outside of the lock that belongs there. And you deal with that additional lock charge at the end of your lease. Least you will have your peace of mind. Rather they want to keep that lock or remove it. That's up to them, but you do what you have to do to make yourself feel safe, because safety is first. The art of war is the element of surprise. We are living in a time of warfare. There are people that is plotting on you and you don't even know it. There's people watching you and you don't even know it. So you have to always, I teach myself and I teach my daughter, safety first. Nothing is more prevalent, nothing is more important than your safety. Any place that you go into, you always look, is there a safe place? Is this a safe place for me to be in? Is there how am I going to get out if something should happen? You have to think ahead. And as women, we always, that's in our nature to think ahead. But sometimes we forget and we get lackadaisical on that thought process. Always think ahead. Do not wait for a situation to arise to be caught like this. Always think, if this should happen, if I go in this place, where am I going to go? Which door am I going out of? If I move into this place, I'm going to let this landlord, this leasing agency know what I intend on doing. I will have an additional lock put on for my safety. At the end of this lease, I will gladly hand those keys over to you. If you need to take it out of my security deposit, if you will, by all means do so. I will keep the receipt, but that will be added on. Okay? So just a little bit of FYI. Teach your daughters the same way, because we're going into, a lot of women, we are living independently. So you need, and if you don't own your home and you're leasing, you need to have that understanding and that security for yourself. It's not about anybody else. It's about securing you and your family, by all means. So I say, I hope that this was a blessing to you. I hope that you bless someone with this by sharing my channel, because I have so many more cautionary tales to give you. Stories, if you will, testimonies, if you will, but all of it is for you to grow, learn, and for it to be some sort of motivation, an inspiring factor in your life. I would like to give you something. Each story I give, I would like to give you something behind it, not just to tell you a story. Okay? So I say thank you for sticking in, and thank you for bearing with me through my tea and my cautionary tales. And I say that you will not be disappointed. This is your new home. Welcome aboard. I got more to give you, and I am honored to do so. So I say, be blessed, God bless, and be a blessing to someone else. Peace.